The morning Adire almost walked past Mama Celeste was the morning everything changed. Though Adire would not know that until much later. It was a Thursday just after 7 in the morning, and the street outside the Sainte-Anne Community Center was still quiet the way. Early mornings are quiet in that part of Montreal. A low hum of delivery trucks, the smell of bread from the bakery 2 doors down, pigeons pecking at the cracked sidewalk. Adire had been awake since 5. She had ironed her uniform the night before, packed her bag carefully, checked her bus pass twice. She could not afford to be late, not today, not after everything. She was 26 years old and she had been in Canada for 3 years, and those 3 years had not been easy. She was working as a healthcare aide at the Sainte-Anne long-term care residence. Early shifts, double shifter sometimes, the kind of work that leaves your feet aching and your back stiff but your mind full of other people's faces. She had come from Côte d'Ivoire originally, raised partly by her grandmother in Abidjan, before moving to Montreal to study nursing, which she had not yet finished because money ran out in the 2nd year and she had to stop. She told herself she would go back. She still told herself that. That Thursday morning she was turning the corner near the bus stop when she saw the old woman. Mama Celeste was standing at the edge of the pavement, trying to drag a trolley cart up over the curb. The trolley was the old-fashioned kind. Metal frame, canvas bag, wheels that caught on every uneven surface. It was clearly heavy. The old woman was leaning into it with both hands, her thin shoulders straining, her breath short and visible in the cold morning air. She was maybe 75, 80. She wore a headscarf in deep green and a long coat that had once been elegant. Nobody else on the street stopped. A man in a business jacket walked past without looking. 2 teenagers crossed to the other side. Adire stopped. She set down her own bag and went to the old woman's side without saying anything first. She just took hold of the trolley from the other side and lifted, and the 2 of them got it up over the curb together. "Mercy," the old woman said, catching her breath. Then she looked at Adire more carefully. "You are not from here originally?" "Non, Mamad," Adire said. She had learned quickly that everyone's grandmother was Mama here if you said it with enough warmth. "From Abidjan. But I live here now." The old woman smiled at that, a slow, considering smile. "I am from Cameroon. Many years ago now." She patted the trolley. "I have groceries for my neighbor. She cannot walk well this week." Adire looked at her watch. She had 12 minutes before her bus. The old woman's building was half a block away. She could see the awning from where they stood. She picked up her own bag and the old woman's trolley. "Let me help you get it inside." She missed her bus. She caught the next one and arrived at Sainte-Anne 4 minutes before her shift began. Not late, but close enough to feel the anxiety sit in her chest the whole morning. She did not think much about the old woman after that. People needed help every day. You helped when you could. That was what her grandmother had told her, and she believed it. She did not learn Mama Celeste's full name until much later. She did not know that Thursday morning that the old woman had watched her walk away toward the bus stop and stood there on the pavement, thinking to herself that she had not seen a face like that in a long time. Open, unhurried, kind without wanting to be seen being kind. Mama Celeste noticed these things. She always had. The residence where Adire worked had 42 residents and a staff roster that was always too thin. She was one of 3 aides on the morning shift, and her supervisor, a man named Mr. Hargreaves, ran the floor with the particular exhausted authority of someone who had been managing people for 30 years and was running out of patience for all of it. He was not unkind exactly, but he was precise, and he kept notes, and he did not overlook mistakes. Adire had been careful. 3 years without a single formal complaint. Not one incident report with her name on it. Residents who asked for her by name. Families who left notes at the front desk thanking her specifically. She knew her work was good. She let the work speak. There was another aide on the floor named Pascaline, younger than Adire by 2 years, hired 6 months ago, and from the first week, Pascaline had watched Adire the way some people watch someone who has something they want. Not with admiration, with assessment. Pascaline was charming at the nurse's station and sharp-tongued in the break room. She talked about the residents with the casual shorthand of someone who had not yet learned to see old age as something that would happen to them too. Aide had tried once to say something gentle about it, and Pascaline had laughed and said she was too serious, that it was just venting, that everyone did it. Adire did not bring it up again. What she did not know was that Pascaline had applied for the senior aide position 6 weeks ago, the same position Adire had also applied for. It was one step up, a small raise, a little more responsibility on the floor. Adire had applied because her supervisor had encouraged her. She had not told anyone else. Pascaline found out from someone at the front desk. The weeks that followed were ordinary on the surface and uncomfortable underneath. Adire noticed that things went missing from her locker, nothing valuable. A hair clip, a small bottle of hand cream. But she could not prove anything, and she did not want to make accusations she could not support. She noticed that sometimes when she came back from a resident's room, small details she had documented in the care log had been altered, tiny changes, the kind that looked like clerical errors but accumulated strangely. She told herself she was imagining it. She was not imagining it. The morning it came to a head, Adire had been working a double shift and was coming back from the medication room, when Mr. Hargreaves stopped her in the hallway with a look on his face she had not seen directed at her before. "I need to speak with you," he said. "In my office." There was a missing medication blister pack from the controlled substances cabinet. Not missing exactly, it had been found in Adire's assigned section, in the wrong drawer tucked behind a stack of washcloths in a resident's room. The resident's room that Adire had been assigned to that morning. A report had been made. Someone had flagged it. Adire sat across from Mr. Hargreaves and listened to him, explained the situation, and felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her. The way the floor tilts when something you cannot control is happening, and your brain has not yet accepted it. "I did not put anything in that drawer," she said. Her voice was steady. She had learned a long time ago to keep her voice steady when it mattered. "I have never taken anything from this building, in 3 years. Mr. Hargreaves looked at her. She could see that he believed her, or wanted to. But a report had been made, and there were procedures, and he had to follow them. She was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. She was asked to leave her badge at the desk. She walked out through the front door of Sainte-Anne into the cold grey afternoon and stood on the pavement for a moment, then breathed. She would not cry here. She would not give anyone that. She took the bus home and sat very still the whole ride, and did not look at her phone, and did not call anyone. That evening, she called her grandmother in Abidjan, which she could not really afford, and her grandmother listened to the whole story without interrupting once, and then said, "Adire, the truth is not afraid of time. Remember that." She wrote it on a piece of paper and put it on the wall beside her bed. The investigation took 11 days. Those 11 days were the kind of days that stretch. She cleaned her apartment 3 times. She took long walks along the canal in Lachine, the cold water moving slowly beside the path, the bare trees. She applied for 2 other positions, went to 1 interview, tried to read a novel, and could not concentrate past the 3rd page. She did not know who had made the report. She suspected, but suspecting was not knowing, and she refused to say Pascaline's name out loud to anyone without being sure. What she did not know, what she could not have known, was that on the 8th day of her administrative leave, an older woman had walked into the front reception of Sainte-Anne long-term care residence and asked to speak to someone in charge. Mama Celeste had a nephew who lived in the neighborhood, a man named Renaud, who worked in property management. Renaud had mentioned months ago, casually over dinner, that his company managed several buildings in the area, and that the old residents on Sainte-Anne had been going through some staffing difficulties. Mama Celeste filed this information away, the way she filed everything, quietly, without comment, to be retrieved later if needed. When she had seen Adire leave the building through the front door, with her badge in her hand, and that particular stillness on her face that Mama Celeste recognized, it was the stillness of someone holding themselves together in public. She had waited. She had watched the girl get on the bus. She had stood at the corner for a moment. Then she had gone home, made herself tea, and thought about it for 2 days. On the 8th day, she walked into Sainte-Anne. She did not say she knew Adire. She said she had been considering long-term care options for a friend, and had heard this residence recommended. And while she was there, she had a small question, Would it be possible to speak with the director of operations? She had spent 40 years as a social worker. She knew how to get into rooms. She spoke to the director for 45 minutes. She did not mention Adire by name. She asked questions about the culture of the facility, about how staff concerns were handled, about the complaint process. She had a way of asking questions that made people answer more than they intended to. She learned enough. On the 10th day, Adire got a call from a number she did not recognize. She almost did not answer. The voice was older, accented, Cameroonian French underneath English, the way Mama Celeste always spoke. You do not know my name, but I think I know a little about your situation. I want to help if I can. Would you be willing to meet me for tea? Adire stood in her kitchen, holding the phone and trying to understand what was happening. How do you know my name? She asked carefully. I know you stopped to help me with a heavy trolley on a cold morning in November, Mama Celeste said. That was 4 months ago. I have seen you leave for work many mornings since then. I live 3 buildings from your bus stop. And last week I saw you leave your workplace without your badge, and I recognized that look. Adire sat down on her kitchen chair. What kind of look? She asked. The look of someone who has been wronged and is too proud to fall apart in public, Mama Celeste said. I know it because I have worn it myself. They met the next morning at a cafe on Notre Dame Ouest. Mama Celeste was already there when Adire arrived, sitting with a pot of tea and a small notebook on the table in front of her. She was smaller than Adire remembered, but her eyes were absolutely alert. Sit, she said. Let me tell you what I think happened, and you tell me where I am wrong. She was not wrong about any of it. Mama Celeste had spent 4 decades navigating institutions, writing reports, advocating for people who did not know how to advocate for themselves. She knew what targeted workplace harassment looked like. She knew what a manufactured incident looked like. And she had, over the years, cultivated relationships with a lawyer who did employment law pro bono for a few cases a year, with a former labor board official who now consulted privately, with a journalist who covered social care issues for a Montreal weekly. I am not going to fix this for you, she said clearly. It is not mine to fix. But I can make sure the right people ask the right questions. Is that acceptable to you? Adire looked at this woman across the table. This woman she had helped for 4 minutes on a cold sidewalk without expecting anything, without even learning her name, and felt something in her chest loosen for the first time in 11 days. Yes, she said, that is acceptable. The investigation concluded on day 11, 1 day after Mama Celeste had spoken with the employment lawyer, who had called the director of operations at Saint-Anne to ask, in very measured and professional language, a series of questions about the documentation chain and the timing of the incident report relative to an internal promotion decision. The director of operations made several phone calls of his own that afternoon. By the following Monday, the review board had examined the security footage from the medication room, footage that, it turned out, had not been carefully reviewed during the initial investigation. The footage showed the medication room entrance at the relevant time. Adire had entered. Adire had left. The footage also showed, 20 minutes later, another staff member entering. The timestamps were clear. Pascaline resigned before she was asked to leave. Adire got a call from Mr. Hargreaves on a Tuesday morning. He asked if she would come in to speak with him. His voice had a different quality than the last time, quieter, a little careful. When she sat down in his office, he told her that the investigation had been concluded in her favor, that her record would reflect this, and that her position was waiting for her whenever she was ready to return. He paused then and looked at his hands briefly and said, I also want to say that I am sorry for the way this was handled. You deserved better than that. It was a simple thing to say. It was the right thing to say. She accepted it. One more thing, he said, and slid a folder across the desk. The senior aide position. The interview panel would like to meet with you next week, if you're willing. Your application was strong. This whole situation, he paused, should not have interrupted the process. She looked at the folder. I will be there, she said. She called Mama Celeste that evening. They had been speaking most days since the cafe meeting. Short calls, checking in, Mama Celeste updating her on what she had learned, and Adire asking questions she had never quite known how to ask before. about how institutions worked, how to protect herself, what documentation to keep. "It is over," Adire said. "The investigation. They cleared me." There was a brief silence on the line, the satisfied silence of someone who had believed this would happen, and is not surprised but is still glad. "Good," Mama Celeste said. "There is also an interview," Adire said. "For the senior position." "Ah," another pause. "Then you will prepare well, and you will go, and you will tell them exactly what you are capable of." "With considerable." Adire laughed a little, which surprised her. She had not laughed much recently. "You don't know what I'm capable of," she said. "I know you stopped on a busy street at 7 in the morning when you were clearly rushing somewhere important," Mama Celeste said. "And you helped an old woman with a heavy cart without being asked and without waiting to be thanked. That tells me quite a lot." Adire was quiet for a moment. "You were going to your neighbor," she said. "The groceries." "My neighbor who cannot walk well, yes. She is 81 and she has nobody nearby. I bring her things twice a week." A pause. "She has been asking about you, by the way. I told her about you. She doesn't know me. She knows you helped me." That was enough for her. She got the senior aide position 3 weeks later. The interview panel told her afterward that her application had been the strongest in the pool. Clear documentation of outcomes, strong resident feedback, concrete examples. She had always done the work. It had always been there to see. She went back to Mama Celeste's building that Saturday with a small tin of shortbread from the bakery, 2 doors down from the community center, the one whose smell she always caught in the morning. She had finally gone in and bought something. Mama Celeste opened the door and looked at the tin and shook her head slowly, smiling. "You did not have to," she said. "I wanted to," Adire said. She was invited in for tea. The apartment was full of plants and books and photographs on every surface. Decades of a life, clearly and densely lived. A woman of about 80, small and sharp-eyed, was sitting in an armchair near the window with a blanket across her knees. This was Mama Celeste's neighbor, Georgette. "Ah," Georgette said, looking at Adire carefully. "So this is the young woman." "This is Adire," Mama Celeste said. Georgette tilted her head. "You know, I have seen many people walk past that curb on cold mornings. Many people. Nobody stops." She looked at Adire steadily. "But you stopped." Adire did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing, and sat down and accepted the tea that Mama Celeste pressed into her hands. And outside the window the Montreal afternoon was bright and cold and clear, the kind of afternoon that does not apologize for anything. Months later, when people asked Adire how she got through that year, the investigation, the leave, the uncertainty, she found it difficult to explain in a way that made complete sense. It was not that one person had saved her. It was not that simple, and she did not want to frame it that simply. What she said, when she could find the words, was something like, one morning she had chosen not to walk past something difficult, and that choice had traveled further than she could have imagined. Not because the world rewards kindness automatically or neatly, or on any schedule you can predict, but because the kind of person you are tends to attract, eventually, the kind of witness you need. Mama Celeste said it differently. She said, "You planted something in November. You just didn't know what the soil was." Adire kept that. She wrote it beside her grandmother's words on the paper by her bed. "The truth is not afraid of time." You planted something and you didn't know what the soil was. She returned to her nursing studies the following September. Part-time, in the evenings, the way most people do things that matter when life does not pause to accommodate them. Mama Celeste came to the small gathering Adire organized to mark the first completed semester. Just a few friends, tea and rice, and good music in a small apartment. She sat in the corner with Georgette, who had come in a wheelchair that evening, and watched Adire move around the room, laughing and talking, and she was content in the way of someone who has seen the right ending to a story they believed in from the beginning. The street outside the St. Anne Community Center was the same as always. The bakery, the pigeons, the cracked sidewalk, the bus arriving on its own schedule. Every morning, Adire walked past and thought for just a moment of a cold Thursday in November and a heavy trolley and an old woman who had been paying attention all along. She was glad she had stopped.